The Opportunity Rover was a marvel of engineering. Why? Well, it wasn't just the impressive science instruments that helped us piece together the history of Mars. It's the fact that this mission was originally planned to last just 90 Martian days, or 90 sols, and yet by this point in the series it had already racked up roughly 3,800 sols. For some context, it touched down in 2004, and in this series we've now reached 2014 with plenty of ground still left to cover. Unsurprisingly, though, ordinary wear and tear, combined with Mars's unpredictable environment, had started catching up with Opportunity. Its arm had suffered mechanical failures. Its flash memory kept malfunctioning. Several of its science instruments were no longer performing anywhere near as well as they had at launch. Even so, brutal winters and treacherous sand dunes hadn't managed to stop Opportunity yet, and we pick things up as it heads toward the summit of Cape Tribulation. I'm Alex McColgan, and you're watching Astrum. And in this final episode of the Opportunity series, we'll trace the rover's path all the way to the end of its remarkable mission, and look back at everything it discovered along the way. Standing atop Cape Tribulation on Sol 3894, Opportunity gazed out across the sprawling, 22-kilometer-wide Endeavour crater. Endeavour is an ancient crater, its floor long since buried under drifting sand dunes. From this vantage point, the only real giveaway that it's a crater at all is its rim, still standing above the otherwise flat Meridiani plains. Just past Cape Tribulation lay Opportunity's next stop, Marathon Valley. The valley earned its name because by the time Opportunity reached it, the rover would have covered the exact distance of a marathon. Finishing a marathon in 11 years, now that's quite the finishing time. To mark the occasion, mission controllers staged their own relay marathon with a model of Opportunity as they crossed the 42-kilometer or 26.2-mile mark. But Marathon Valley wasn't just a symbolic milestone. There were rock formations here that mission scientists were eager to study. Getting down into the valley meant tackling the steepest slope Opportunity had yet encountered, a 32-degree grade. The incline was so severe that dust that had accumulated on the solar panels actually started sliding off during the descent. Once safely down, Opportunity's first stop was a small feature known as the Spirit of St. Louis. Technically a tiny crater, but one with some exposed rock outcrops worth examining. Unfortunately, it was around this point that the flash memory problem triggered yet another computer reset. Mission engineers had managed to trace the fault to a specific bank of cells on the flash drive, and quarantining that section helped somewhat, cutting the resets down from several times a day to roughly once a month. But it didn't eliminate the issue entirely. Eventually, engineers made the call to bypass the flash memory altogether and run the rover in RAM-only mode. The catch was that RAM gets wiped the moment the computer powers down, so any science data that hadn't yet been beamed back to Earth risked being lost for good. Marathon Valley was flanked by two ridges, Hinner's Point to the north and Knudsen Ridge to the south. Here, Opportunity resumed its search for clay minerals, evidence of ancient standing water on Mars. Mission scientists had first spotted signs of clay on these ridges from orbit using the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, which lined up with the reddish patches visible in enhanced color images. Up close, Opportunity found these rocks to be unusually brittle, crumbling far more easily than other rocks it had studied before, with compositions unlike much of what it had seen elsewhere in the region. Data collection here was steady but painfully slow. The alpha particle X-ray spectrometer on Opportunity's arm had lost much of its sensitivity, so sample readings that would have taken mere minutes early in the mission were now dragging on for days or even weeks, a problem made worse by the rover's increasingly unreliable onboard computer. As a result, it took Opportunity well over a year just to work its way through Marathon Valley. From there, it pressed deeper into Endeavour Crater and was treated to quite a sight, a dust devil spinning across the crater floor. Opportunity's twin rover, Spirit, had spotted dust devils fairly often, but they were a much rarer occurrence for Opportunity. Scientists believe these passing dust devils were actually responsible for the occasional cleaning events that swept accumulated dust off the rover's solar panels. Opportunity's next objective lay farther south still, a gully that scientists suspected might have been carved by flowing water. No Mars mission had ever gotten a close look at a gully before, so anticipation was high for what it might reveal. Reaching it wasn't easy, though. The route took Opportunity down through a break in the crater rim called the Lewis and Clark Gap, down through Bitterroot Valley, and on to a feature named Spirit Mound, capturing some striking panoramas along the way of ridges overlooking the dune fields spread across the crater floor. By the time it reached Spirit Mound, Opportunity had been operating on Mars for more than 4,500 sols, roughly 12 Earth years. All things considered, it remained in decent shape, comfortably generating around 450 watts from its solar panels. On the way to the gully, it made periodic stops to carry out science tasks, from imaging specific rocks to measuring argon levels in the atmosphere. Opportunity finally arrived at the gully in September 2017. It was named Perseverance Valley, and scientists hoped to determine whether it had been shaped by water, ice, or wind. Based on its shape, something clearly appeared to have flowed through it at some point. An Opportunity also spotted rocks lining the channel, possibly deposited there by moving water. In the end, though, the rover wasn't able to reach a definitive conclusion. After months studying the site, Opportunity crossed the 5,000 sol mark, and it celebrated in fitting fashion by snapping its first full self-portrait. The image comes out noticeably blurry, since it was taken with the fixed focus microscopic imager on its arm, a camera built for extreme close-ups, not group photos of itself. In June 2018, the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter spotted a dust storm beginning to form. That in itself wasn't unusual. Dust storms come and go on Mars fairly regularly, and Opportunity had already weathered a few. But within days of forming, it became clear this one was different. It spread across the entire planet with alarming speed, and mission controllers began bracing for an extended low-power period. On June 3rd, Opportunity was still producing 468 watts. By the next day, that had dropped to 345 watts. By June 6th, it had crashed to just 133 watts. Dust thrown up by the storm choked the atmosphere so thoroughly that sunlight would have barely penetrated it at all. The worst storm Opportunity had faced before this was back in 2007 with an atmospheric opacity, a tau value of 5.5, a figure that had nearly been enough to end the mission outright. This new storm registered a tau of 10.8, nearly double the severity of that earlier one. Mission operations were stripped down to the bare minimum, limited to health check reports sent twice a day, and by June 12th, Opportunity slipped into continuous hibernation. The storm dragged on for months, and with each passing week, mission controllers grew less hopeful that Opportunity would ever wake back up. 3 months later, the storm finally weakened enough that recovery efforts began in earnest. By October, the skies had cleared completely, but the rover still hadn't responded, even after 350 separate contact attempts. Through November, controllers held out hope that wind might eventually blow the dust off its panels, but after roughly 1,000 more attempts stretching into February, they finally gave up and declared the mission over. Opportunity's 15-year, 5,652 sol journey on Mars had come to an end, and what a mission it turned out to be. Opportunity tracked temperature, atmospheric conditions, the planet's rotation, and much more. But its greatest legacy was delivering definitive proof that Mars once resembled Earth far more closely than we'd imagined, complete with stable bodies of liquid water on its surface in the distant past. It's easy to take that fact for granted today, but at the time, confirming it was nothing short of groundbreaking. Shortly before it fell silent, Opportunity had been in the middle of transmitting one final panorama of the spot, where it would come to rest. Its now famous last message was poetically interpreted as, "My battery is low and it's getting dark," and its very last image showed the sun, faint and obscured behind a haze of dust. And that wraps up our recap of the entire Opportunity mission. If you missed any earlier episodes in the series, you'll find the full playlist linked below. Now, here's a sponsor I think you'll appreciate. A few of you have mentioned that part of why you watch Astrum is because I try to keep things concise, packing in as much useful information as possible without wasting your time. If your schedule doesn't leave much room to spare, getting information quickly probably matters to you too, and that's exactly where Blinkist comes in. It's an app that distills nonfiction, books down into text or audio-style summaries you can get through in about 15 minutes. Their library currently holds more than 3,000 titles, with new ones added regularly, and everything is available offline as well. I recently checked out a book called The Order of Time, about how time fits into our understanding of the universe. Genuinely mind-bending stuff, but written and condensed in a way that makes it an easy, quick read. Using the link in the description, you can try Blinkist free for 7 days, and that same link also gets you 25% off a full membership. So if quick, compact learning sounds appealing, it's worth giving a shot. Thanks for watching. A big thank you as well to my patrons and members for continuing to make videos like this possible. And subscribing or liking the video helps a lot too. All the best, and I'll see you next time.